Hi, welcome to Candid Conversations with Doc V, a collaboration with the unprecedented enterprise Win-Win Women, a global movement to reach, teach, and talk with women and girls around the world in 195 nations. As a woman heals, folks, the earth heals. Our mission is to care, connect, and collaborate with 3.9 billion women worldwide, so all can enjoy a level of excellence in every area of their lives and be more joyful, fulfilled, and financially secure. We care by loving and inspiring all women. We connect as we teach and talk together. We collaborate to grow successful businesses. To that end, Candid Conversations is where real talk about real experiences and circumstances is the norm and not the exception, to help you heal, rebuild, and transform your life from the inside out and put you back in business and on the road to defining your path. Hi, I'm Doc V, if you haven't figured that out, the pivot maestro and your corner woman, here to provide truth and transparency and conversation to help you navigate the waters and think without a box. What is my why? You are my why and my motivation to create a safe haven, to validate you and your experience, and to provide hope and freedom in your thinking and being so that you may live the life and lifestyle you were meant to lead. We welcome all to the conversation, particularly those men who love and support us, with our topics running the gamut and focused on issues women face every day in life, the workplace, career transition, and business. On Candid Conversations, it is our intention to always provide revelation, reconciliation, and renaissance, having one mission in mind to help you define your path. And one message: you are mission essential. Yes, even as a woman, because you are grace under pressure and the world needs your voice. So folks, last week, our conversation was a remix of Managing Your Reality on the thought of conscious intuition. What is conscious intuition? We'll talk a little bit more about it today. I'm getting tongue twisted today. Probably because I am so excited about today's guest, and we're going to introduce her in a moment. This week, we are remixing yet again on the human desire, search, need for validation in context to managing your reality. My guest today is Miss Brianna Sexton. Brianna is a tea-loving dog mom who is absolutely bonkers about all things customer journey, conversations, and going deep down the rabbit hole on embodied healing, my type of woman. She is the owner of Brianna Sexton and Company, a coaching and consulting firm dedicated to helping you understand yourself, your clients, and the legacy you want to leave. Her mission is to stand as a voice for the voiceless, I love that, and walk a path that allows others to reclaim their sovereignty. She serves women, millennial moms, and entrepreneurs. Brianna also has a podcast called Brianna's Home for Tea, so be sure to check it out. And she is in the process of starting a mobile tea pop-up shop. Oh, brilliant. I wish you lived closer to me, Brianna. Brianna, welcome to Candid Conversations.
Thanks for having me. And I have an online sale, so I can absolutely reach you.
Bravo. Great idea. Look at that. I love it. I love it. Women innovators.
Yes. Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here to have candid conversations. Oh, so beautiful.
Yes, you know, and our pre-talk just, I'm already getting chills on where this is going to go. So let's allow our audience to be a part of our conversation. So Brianna, this week is all about the role of validation within managing our reality, specifically validation as the subconscious antagonist. So that thing opposed to that struggles against us, or another descriptor, the muscle that works in opposition to another being our conscious mind. In our last conversation, we discussed in depth a new term that I have introduced, conscious intuition, being that disruptor of conditioning that brings forth the subconscious conversation happening in the shadows of our mind into consciousness, serving as our corner woman, corner man, if you're familiar with that boxing term, that person or that thing that has the power to overcome the noise of the crowd that we hone into, and that being the subconscious, the noise, the crowd noise. So I want to talk about validation and how it feeds into the conditioned noise of life that prevents most people from hearing and answering their sole purpose, their unique call to greatness. What are your thoughts? Jump in wherever you want to in that intro.
So as an entrepreneur and having been in this space, it's something that I see a lot, as far as when we go out to speak our mind, to speak our voice, when we put our passions and our name behind these things, a lot of what comes up is this feeling of worthiness that is tied to other people's thoughts, fears, feelings, actions, and how that has settled into us. So as an embodiment coach, like this is something that I do is really tapping into where people feel what. Like right now, I have a lot going on in my solar plexus, like right in my diaphragm area. Mm-hmm. So really bringing those to the front to say like, this is mine or this is not mine. And then making that conscious decision to say, now that I know that it's not mine, or maybe it feels like mine, but why is that? Where did it come from? And really diving into the truth of the matter of what is and what isn't, I think is super important. So those are like my initial thoughts as far as how that comes to be. And I think it can come up as fear. It comes up as imposter syndrome. A lot of times, is how I see it. But it's something that I see people getting really stuck in their voice as far as being able to communicate. And so, having that process to move through that really consciously and to question it.
I love how you talked about, it being rooted also in just feelings of worthiness, and then even taking it to the entrepreneurial journey, and needing that validation to make sure we're on the right track, or am I really worthy to speak to what I'm speaking to, that whole imposter syndrome thing. So what do you think that need is, that desire in us that causes us to seek validation, and not just stand in our knowledge, our experience, can you speak a little bit more to that? Where does that stem from?
I won't speak for everyone. I'll speak from my experience. So growing up, I lived in a very, it's my way or highway kind of environment. So for me, being an Aquarius and being really out there and being a performer in my heart, like having that too muchness, it was kind of simmered down, right? Because you have that very church-like, children should be seen, not heard. And then being of the generation, speaking for millennials, being of the generation that did the No Child Left Behind, like all of our worth got tied into grades. It got tied into success being, can you get the grades to go to high school, to graduate high school, to go to college, to get the degree, to get the job, like to check off the to-do list. Right. And it became less about exploring people as people and developing their wants and their needs and their desires, and more of a structured, can you get from one place to the next? So a lot of what I see is rooted in that. Like, if I don't get the grades, that I'm a failure, right? Or we get the grades that tell us that we failed. And we we didn't have the emotional processing, I guess, to really dive into what that looks like. Right. So for me, even once I got the job, once I had the full time, once I almost finished my schooling and then they got the married and all of the things.
All the boxes.
Right. I checked all the boxes, and not being happy, then it becomes a conversation of, well, what about me? Right. But we're also told when we say, what about me, that it's selfish and we shouldn't do that. So there's a lot of stamping that comes from, or tamping, that comes from others. And essentially it's generationally put on us, and unintentionally, I think. But it's done with as much knowledge as we had when we had it.
You know, you made so many interesting points there. And one, I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but I loved how you said, just we don't allow people to explore being people. You know, and I would even go so far as to say, you know, our societies aren't really set up like that, you know, and particularly education. You know, I talk a lot about, you know, when we're children, we're put on these paths, right? And we go in these directions, you know, these paths that are not defined by us, but by well-meaning people usually, who see potential in us. But, you know, they see like these singularities as opposed to, you know, all of the possibilities. And so I don't know that we ever really have the opportunity until we become conscious of this fact, or maybe, you know, like where we're, I don't know, if we play extracurricular or we're in extracurricular activities as children, where we get to explore different facets of, you know, of ourselves in that way. But traditionally, I don't know that we ever have that room to really explore who we are, and, you know, and really decide for ourselves consciously. You know, and that ties into your comments about mindset and emotions. You know, I talk a lot about being able to, you know, take captive, you know, your thoughts and, you know, and bring that, you know, that's the whole conscious intuition concept that I've introduced, where, you know, you're bringing, you know, the conversation that's in the shadows, that all those limiting beliefs that's keeping you in that space, and you're bringing it conscious, and you're reconciling that. You're dealing with your hurt, your hangups, your habits, and you're literally learning to set your mind to the positive, to a productive place, and learning how to develop your emotional intelligence. But that's never, it's really not brought into conversations in the educational system.
No, I think structurally it isn't designed that way. So I did research when I was in college on even STEM, like women in STEM, and only up until I believe it's 6th grade, that boys and girls perform equally in math and science and technology, because they have, through those first formative years, the structure, the space to be curious, right? Because that's pretty much what science is. It's allowing us to be curious. And then around middle school, that identity changes. And with that identity shift comes the separation between a lot of teachers, a lot of educators, a lot of parents, a lot of mentalities in general, creating that divide and that shift. So it's all learned.
Yes.
But I think as we become more conscious, that's going to shift. And I've seen it shift a little bit through the education system, but I think that there's still work to be done there, for sure.
Right. And even in society, you know, mindset and emotions are so important when it comes to the validation conversation, you know, and just understanding and embracing who we are, and the fact that we are uniquely and divinely made, and therefore meant to be different. Once you understand that you were meant to be different, that's huge, you know, and it really breaks the validation chains that that bind us. So, you know, people who tend to tap into the spiritual side of life, you know, whatever your source is, you know, my source being God, you know, that tends to help you when you go through that discovery process. It helps you tap into, you know, that soul connection and understanding that. And even, you know, in just the exploration or the big question as to why are we here? Why were we put on this earth? You know, and finding your soul purpose. What do you think about that? Just that connection to that spiritual side of life.
I think it's huge. And I have recently gone through that. So I'm going to I choose carefully how I tell this story.
Candid conversation.
That works. So I recently went through the experience of a divorce, and through that had to untie a lot of that validation that I had, a lot of the stories that I believed around what that looked like. And in the process of doing that, I came to realize how important that source was, how detached I was from that source for years, and how I let that navigate my life in a not positive way. It served me the way it needed to at the time, but once I came back to the magic, the energy, the spiritual connection that I have with all things, it was such a beautiful transformation. And not needing the validation, but hearing from people who had seen me right before I made the decision, and then 6 months later say, you are an entirely different person.
Wow.
Just from being able to walk this path, to connect with self and nature and hear my voice, to understand what my mission was, to realize that I was essentially an echo. Like, I was supposed to speak for voiceless, and that stepping away from spirit was the thing that I needed to kind of validate for me that experience that I was made to serve in this space. The journey that I had was to go through the process of voicelessness so that I was empathetic, so that I understood the different nuances of what that looked like to help women and children and next generations not go through this.
Wow.
Yeah.
So first of all, I love just that concept, that thought about, you know, speaking up for the voiceless. You know, it's a passion of mine as well. But you said something very key that I want to talk about toward as connected to managing your reality. You know, you had to get away from the noise of life, you know, from your situation, your circumstance. How did you find the strength to do that?
I had lots of coaches, and and I'm grateful for them every day. One of my coaches was silence, and I think that was the hardest one because it allowed me the gift of listening to myself. Because when you're in a practice where you sit in silence and you have to watch your thoughts,
yes,
literally as they come up, every single one of them, and then without judgment, right? So if we're taught to shame, to learn, like, for me, it was fat shaming, and I'm not small by any means, but like being told since I was 10 that if I ate French fries, I would be fat and I would look like 600-pound life, and not eating in 6th grade at 12 years old because of that as a size 2, like, so being able to see the thoughts that are coming up and then to change my language around it was huge. So lots of time away from people by myself. Energetically, I'm an introvert. So that was really good for me as well. But breath work was poignant as well. Guided meditation for the times that I didn't quite know how to get the answers that I needed. And then just being around spiritual healers, and having my coaches and leaning in and knowing when to lean in, when to sit in silence. Because my thing is like, I feel emotions, I have to put it out. I need somebody to, and it goes back to that validation, right? Like, I have all of these things and I need somebody to tell me that I'm not crazy, instead of just sitting with it and being like, I am safe within my body. Right. I think that was one of my dear friends, George Kalantzis. He wrote a book called The Art of Tough Transitions, or Nowhere to Go. It's The Art of Tough Transitions. But I did a breathwork session with him, and I realized, like, as my body was tensing and like things were coming up and I was coughing and heaving and all the good things that happen, because if it's coming up, it's coming out. But one of the things that he said that I just like shook my body awake was that you're safe in your body. And after 5 years of having stress seizures and depression and anxiety, and like, to know that like I was safe in this one vessel that is always with me was profound. And so that's been my new thing, is when I feel emotions, when I feel stillness, when I feel irritated and I want to go onto social media to numb, or I want to go into other people, is to sit with myself and to say, what do I need? And to start there. And then once I know what I need, because I've given myself that space and that clarity to come back to myself, to get the answers, and know, to have that practice that empowers me to know that I do have answers. Like, I don't need them from anyone else. That process was pretty much my entire thing. And that's what I do in my coaching with my people as well.
Beautiful. So you found a way to learn how to validate yourself.
Yes.
Instead of seeking the outward approval stamp, if you will, of the world and other people. Beautiful. Okay, so real talk again. So I'm gonna share a little something. So I love the Divergent series. Okay. Actually, I remember sitting there, I was actually watching the movie version of the Allegiant, and the philosophy that came out, the assertion that if you're too brave, you risk cruelty, too peaceful, passivity, and too smart, a lack of compassion. You know, and I tell you, it was just like, I had a revelation, the light bulb went off, and, you know, and I never looked back. You know, so I think this is the condition, this is the everyday condition struggle of humanity. You know, if we could all embrace and own the concept or the thought of, you know, the divergent, right? Which was the whole purpose for the experiment, you know, someone who was not singular, who had the ability and represented a bit of all of this in varying measures. I mean, where would we, you know, where would we be in humanity? What would the human condition be like? You know, today, well, look, we just heard about another mass shooting because of, you know, some, you know, racist ideology, or I forget even the term, but what are your thoughts on that?
I love this question, and I love the Divergent series. And speaking to like my years, even the Avatar series, because this played out in that series too, right? You had the Earth Kingdom; they were a very certain way. Like the Fire Nation was power hungry because they were driven by desire. The Water Kingdom was very passive, and like the air nomads, they were so high up in the clouds that they didn't really interact with everyone. So I actually went to school in an interdisciplinary setting. I got a degree, 98% of a degree in interdisciplinary studies. So the biggest thing for me was that everything has a beautiful line of thought, and to be able to combine those, right? So when you combine sociology with like math and engineering, you can create something that's even stronger than if it was in its discipline itself, right? So instead of having, what's the metaphor that we used? Instead of having like a fruit salad, having a smoothie.
Yeah.
And so I think when you think more in a smoothie mentality, right, there's this beautiful melding of flavors that you get that allows you to think more critically, think more deeply, and to have empathy for all sides, which is why I don't watch the news anymore.
True.
But I think that the human condition would find more peace, would be able to have better conversations, just because we would be allowed to feel and to feel safe, while also understanding where our triggers lie and being able to have that mental capacity to work through them on both sides of the conversation. I had another thought. Where did it go? I don't know where it went somewhere, but I think it was along the lines of the both and duality. That's what it was. So I have this beautiful concept that one of my coaches talked about, and now every time I talk about it, I'm like, you can have your cake and eat it too, because my ex used to say that, and it drove me up a wall, and I couldn't figure out why. And it was because, like, being an Aquarius, I'm like, you can't put me in a box. Like, I am not meant for that. And I'm a 4 on the Enneagram scale, so I don't do structure and things that are confining. I don't like confined things. I don't like cubicles. I don't like, So, yeah, it's the both and. It's that you can be both very masculine and ambitious and still be feminine and nurture yourself. Like, there's no either or about it.
So true.
So once you have that oneness in yourself, I think that having a whole lot of oneness in yourself and a lot of selves having oneness, if that makes sense.
It does.
Then it aligns the frequency that we play on a little bit better. So it's easier. It's a whole lot nicer.
Absolutely. Brianna, girl, that is a perfect way to end our show today. And I tell you, it's just so much. We're definitely going to have you back. It's just so much that we can continue to talk about on the subject matter. And I just love how you ended that. The way you just, because we're kindred spirits, girl. You know, that's my whole think without a box concept. I hate being a place in a box. And someone recently tried to do that to me. And just the reaction before I even realized it, you know, it was just, it's once you find that other side of freedom, you know, and you break all of those chains, there is no going back. So I just thank you. I thank you. And I am just grateful for the place that you're in now and for just sharing and being very candid in your conversation with us today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being a guest.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And audience, your call to action. How does today's conversation apply to your life? I want to encourage you to take time to really look at your life and hold up the validation mirror. Go back and watch this episode again. Do you see a reflection? If so, what is it reflecting? Go deal with those hurts, those hangups, and those habits. Start to work on them and free yourself from the chains that bind. So I'm Doc V. As always, I want you to go visit our website, please, definingpaths.online, and see what we're all about. You know, we're here to serve you and to help you heal, rebuild, and transform your life and businesses from the inside out. I hope you found nuggets in this very real talk today throughout this episode. And ladies and gentlemen who are with us, what is our mantra? Strong is the new sexy. So be strong in mind, body, soul, and define your path and love the skin you're in. I'm Doc V, the Pivot Maestro, and always your corner woman. I am my sister's keeper, and we will see you next week.